There have been many teenage prodigies in Counter-Strike history, but none quite like NiKo. Hailing from the Balkans, a region notorious for its die-hard Counter-Strike players, NiKo didn't just play the game, he embodied it. He was the best teenage player from the region. And let's be real, if you know anything about Balkan Counter-Strike players, you know they take this game more seriously than most take their actual jobs. Yet, despite being one of the best rising stars in the world, he still got benched and kicked from his team. But instead of letting that setback define him, it only fueled his fire. That roadblock wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of his journey to becoming one of the all-time greats. This is NiKo's story. NiKo's story in Counter-Strike began way before CSGO and CS2 were even a thing. Back in 2009, while the Counter-Strike esport games were still clan games in CS 1.6 and Source, NiKo was already getting his name known in the Serbian and Bosnian gaming communities. However, it wasn't until CSGO hit the scene that NiKo began to truly shine and capture the attention of the wider esports world. NiKo's early professional gaming days were far from smooth. His time in iNation wasn't exactly a fairy tale. It was a start, but it was also interrupted by short, sporadic tenures with other teams. No matter where he went, he kept coming back to iNation, where his natural talent and raw skill began to shine. It wasn't until the offer came from mousesports that NiKo's career would take a major turn. The timing seemed right, mousesports was a promising team, and NiKo's moment had finally arrived. In March 2015, he officially joined mousesports. But you see, joining mousesports was supposed to be NiKo's big break, but there was a catch. The roster wasn't exactly built to handle a superstar like him. With players like Speedy and Dennis already on the squad, there was an awkward transition phase. Would NiKo be able to fit in, or was he destined to be another wasted talent? However, he somehow made it work. Despite being on what was, at best, a mid-tier team, NiKo was about to prove that a single player, if talented enough, could overshadow the entire lineup. Every legendary player has that moment, the one that cements their name in the history books. For NiKo, that moment came during his time in mousesports when he dropped one of the most ridiculous plays in CSGO history. The stage? A match against Titan. The weapon? A deagle. What happened? Absolute destruction. NiKo single-handedly erased Titan with one of the cleanest aces ever seen in competitive play. If you've been in the CSGO scene long enough, you know exactly what clip I'm talking about. 5 players, 5 perfect shots. Titan barely had time to react before NiKo turned them into a highlight reel. This wasn't just a flashy play, it was a warning. NiKo had arrived, and the entire world was put on notice. While mousesports wasn't able to secure a major title, NiKo's individual performances started to take the spotlight. At Katowice 2016, NiKo posted a staggering 1.51 rating. Yes, you heard that right. A 1.51 rating, while his team only made it to the quarterfinals. It wasn't the trophy he was after, but the performance itself spoke volumes. He had 42 kills in a losing effort to Fnatic, showcasing just how good he truly was. His ability to carry mousesports single-handedly was evident, and it became clear that NiKo wasn't just another player on the server, he was that player in Counter-Strike. Then came a year later, 2017, when NiKo picked up another massive performance at the E-League Major. Once again, he showed his resilience and skill, but the win still eluded him. Despite these moments of brilliance, NiKo was yet to find that elusive championship, and for many, that left the question, could he do it in the big leagues? But hold up, there's a part we skipped. NiKo's time at Mouse wasn't all smooth sailing. In fact, before these 2 tournaments, he was actually benched for an entire year. And when the team kept falling short of major wins, guess who they blamed? Yep, NiKo. Eventually, they straight up kicked him, claiming the issue was language barriers because he refused to learn German, which, let's be real, sounded pretty wild considering he was easily a top 3 player in the world at the time. Some people started doubting him. Maybe he wasn't as good as everyone thought. But then, everything changed. After much speculation and a lot of movement in the CSGO scene, NiKo found himself joining the high-profile FaZe clan in late 2017. At the time, FaZe was already a powerhouse, but they hadn't quite been able to break through and secure that major win. NiKo was the piece they had been missing. FaZe came out swinging in the first few months, making it to 3 massive grand finals, but back-to-back losses to Astraeals and SK twice were a gut punch. It felt like only a matter of time before they'd break through, but maybe NiKo had some cursed monkey's paw situation going on. Those fears eased, at least temporarily, when FaZe dominated E-League and absolutely bulldozed their way through ESL 1 New York. NiKo's worst rating at that event? A ridiculous 1.37. Even in his off game, he went 16-6. FaZe were on top of the world. NiKo was unstoppable and nothing, absolutely nothing, could stand in their way. But every legendary figure has a struggle to overcome. For NiKo, it was this bizarre, inexplicable curse where FaZe would look untouchable until the grand final. Their dominance before the final was only rivaled by their absolute commitment to choking when it mattered most. Somehow, NiP managed to take them down in a best-of-5 in Oakland. SK crushed them at Pro League, and then there was the infamous E-League major disaster. They picked up wins at ECS and IEM Sydney, sure, but to cement their legacy, they needed more. And then came the heartbreak. On the same stage where NiKo had just been crowned king weeks prior, flusha turned back the clock and snatched victory away from him in 2018. This one hurt, maybe even more than the major loss. This wasn't just bad luck anymore, it was a pattern. When the pressure was on, FaZe disappeared. NiKo never dipped below world-class form, except, frustratingly, when it counted most. He was still a monster, but somehow, it never seemed to matter. FaZe did manage wins at Belo Horizonte and Epicenter, but then came a weak playoff run at the Face It Major, followed by a series of disappointing exits. What should have been the FaZe era was slipping away. 2019 was brutal. NiKo, stepping into more of a leadership role, wasn't the same superstar fragging machine. He was still terrifying, but the insane 1.2 plus ratings he was used to, they were slipping. A brutal 0.8 rating in New York saw FaZe get obliterated in 4 straight maps. Meanwhile, his reputation was taking a hit not just as a player, but as a teammate. When Carrigan was forced out, many saw it as NiKo orchestrating a coup, with no clear upside. To make matters worse, Mouse Sports replaced him and improved. Suddenly, people were wondering, was he even worth the trouble? It was a chaotic year. Roster changes, inconsistent form, underwhelming results. FaZe weren't real contenders anymore. NiKo even slipped to 11th in the HLTV top 20. Unthinkable for a guy who was basically a permanent top 5 player. And then came 2020. The pandemic-era online tournaments were weird, but they gave FaZe a shot at reinvention. When they won IEM New York, it looked like they'd finally figured it out. They hadn't. The collapse continued, and the team was done for. But fate had other plans. As 2020 began to unfold, NiKo saw an opportunity to start fresh, to reinvent himself. When the pandemic altered the competitive landscape and moved the scene online, FaZe's fortunes didn't improve. But LAN play was coming back, and NiKo was hungrier than ever. Without the stress of being an in-game leader and the constant pressure from the community, he went absolutely God mode. He popped off in Cologne, but G2 still weren't quite ready to take the crown. Their kryptonite? Navi, the same squad that crushed them in the Stockholm Major final. G2 was cooking something, but NiKo still couldn't win a final. To be fair, he was the reason they were even in those finals to begin with, but Navi looked unstoppable. G2 was right on the edge of greatness, and then they found their prodigy, AWPer Monesi. With him joining the twin rifle fangs, things were looking up. Add in Alexib, and suddenly there were no more excuses. Monesi was electric in his first tournament, carrying G2 to the Spodek Arena. But FaZe was a different beast. They were the best team in the world at the time, no debate. G2 had the firepower to take them down, but as always, if anyone could stop G2, it was G2. A massive lead on Inferno? Thrown. Series? 3-0 sweep. Pain. At this point, it felt like the curse would never break, especially for NiKo. 2022 wasn't looking great either. Antwerp? A flop. Dallas? Decent. Cologne? Weak. NiKo's prime was slipping away, and the trophies he deserved were nowhere to be seen. But G2 had an ace up their sleeve. Alexib out, Hoochie in. JKS joined, and suddenly, G2 looked fired up. That fire didn't exactly lead to Rio, though. They failed to qualify. Rock bottom. But instead of falling apart, G2 locked in. They grinded, they suffered, and right at the end of 2022, the curse was finally broken. After 5 years without a big trophy, the team that showed up in Abu Dhabi was unrecognizable. And for the first time, NiKo wasn't carrying alone. m0NESY ended up taking MVP. Normally, this is where G2 would collapse again, but this time, it felt different. Fast forward a year, and they returned to the Spodek, where m0NESY's rise began, and where NiKo had faced heartbreak. This time, though, there were no more demons left to haunt them. NiKo, holding back tears, finally lifted a massive trophy. We could hype this up even more, but let's be real. There was no doubt who the best team in the world was. G2 won 21 maps in a row from Blast through to the Katowice Grand Final, dropping only one map the entire time. FaZe, Navi, Liquid couldn't take a single map off them. Heroic barely scraped one. NiKo had finally done what he was supposed to do with FaZe: absolute domination. 2 back-to-back events, start to finish, no questions asked. If his career ended there, it would be a legendary send-off. But this is just the beginning. G2's reign has arrived, and the king has finally taken his throne. Summer rolled around, and NiKo and G2 were back on their demolition tour, steamrolling everyone in their path, including FaZe, his old squad, on the way to the finals. And when the dust settled, G2 had another IEM Cologne trophy in their hands after taking down ENCE 3-1. Another day, another W. 2024 wasn't too bad for NiKo either. He added IEM Dallas and Blast Premier Fall to his collection, and just to flex a little harder, he closed out the year by winning the Blast Premier World Final against Team Spirit. No curses, no almosts, just pure domination. The cherry on top, he was ranked number 2 on HLTV's top 20 players, beating even Simple. Yeah, NiKo was on top of the world again. But then the rumours started swirling. After falling to FaZe in the semi-finals of the Perfect World Shanghai Major, NiKo shocked everyone. He left G2. Whispers of Falcons offering him a mountain of cash and a super team started spreading like wildfire. But NiKo wasn't having any of it. He shut down the noise, saying it had nothing to do with money. He just didn't agree with G2's direction. Then G2's CEO jumped in, claiming that if they really wanted to keep NiKo, they could have. What happens from here on? Only time will tell. Can NiKo win with Falcons 2? Or is age already getting to him? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.